Hello, in this tutorial I will show you how to paint the dragon and castle silhouette. First thing you need to do is trace a circle onto the canvas, and this is one of those circle palettes that I'm using to trace the circle, and the circle is offset about an inch in the upper right hand corner of the canvas. So that circle is going to be the moon, and I just traced that with a pencil. And then I am going to paint. So I'm using a 3/4 inch flat brush. The color's Dioxazine Purple in Titanium White. Dip your 3/4 inch flat brush in the water, pat it dry, and load it with Titanium White. So just Titanium White on the brush, and I'm going to use the full width of the brush to paint a ring around that circle. So we are not painting on the inside of that circle yet. We're going to paint the entire sky on the outside of that circle, and this whole sky is going to go in a circle formation. So the width of that white ring around the moon is about the width of the brush. So I'm using the full width of the brush to paint a nice thick coat of that white. I am going to work kind of fast here. I want to leave that white wet, so I don't want it to dry because I'm going to do some wet on wet blending here. So I'm going to dip the corner of my brush in Dioxazine Purple without rinsing it off, and I'm going to gently blend in that purple with the white. So I'm brushing very gently there. I don't want to paint all the way to that circle. I want that white to still kind of show, so it gives that moon kind of a glow with the pure white. But I want to gently blend that purple in. So I'm brushing over a little bit of that white, and there's white on my brush, and there's a little bit of purple on the corner of my brush, and it's just enough purple to create this light purple color. Okay, so the ultimate goal here is that the moon is the brightest part. So we have the glowing white ring around the moon, and then it turns to light purple, and then it gradually gets darker and darker until the purple turns into like a pure purple. So as I'm reloading my brush, I'm loading it in white still, and with the corner on Dioxazine Purple, so I still get that light color purple. And of course I'm painting in a circle, and then I'm gradually going to start working my way to the edge of the canvas and loading more purple and less white on my brush as I go towards the corner. So this upper right corner here, it's only going to get a little bit darker because it's not too far from the moon, so it's still light. But on the left side it gets very dark, so you'll see that there in a second. But you see how the direction of my stroke is still going in a circle, even though that part is off the canvas. That's the stroke needs to still go in that same circle that's radiating from the moon. So I'm gently brushing over to blend. Okay, so as I reload my brush, I'm going to load it in more Dioxazine Purple and less white. I can still load it in with some white to get it to blend. At this point over here on the bottom right corner, it's getting darker, but it's still not fully dark. Dioxazine Purple is a very dark purple, so if I were to just use purple with no white, it'll show up very dark. Alright, so I'm going to continue to work here. I'm going to go on the left side here, do the same thing, get the colors to blend. So I'm gradually getting darker and darker as I work my way out. And then continuing to blend by painting over your strokes to get it to blend. And then I loaded my brush in a little bit more white there and blended it back in because that purple got a little too dark right there. So the white, and It's okay if your white is not blending perfectly because we don't need a perfect ombre of the white and then it fades to purple, because imagine this is going to be a full moon, so imagine that there's moon rings around the moon and there's some white areas and some of the dark areas, so it doesn't have to be a perfect blend. And I say that with all my sky paintings, and it doesn't have to be a perfect blend because it's the sky, it's nature, it's not perfect. um, but just keep in mind that we're going in a circle, so keep going in the same direction, the circle that's radiating from that initial circle that we traced, and just gradually get darker as you work your way to the edge of the canvas. Okay, so at this point over here on the far left, that's when I would use just the pure purple with no white. And if there's a little bit of white on your brush, that's okay if it still kind of shows up there. We have like a little bit of a white moon ring. So right there, you see how there's a little bit of white, and that's okay because it makes it look like the moon is still kind of glowing way out there. But on the far left edge of the canvases, we want the pure purple, so it'll be pretty dark in those areas. So in a second here, the upper left corner gets cut off. When I was filming this on my iPhone, a spam caller was calling me. So there it is right there. That part of the film got cut off because a spam caller was calling me and it cut the video off, and I didn't realize it at the time. So good thing it only cut that part off, but I just filled in the upper left corner with just the purple. So no need to freak out or anything. You didn't miss out on anything. Okay, so what's happening now is I am using the number 12 flat brush, and we're going to do the moon. So I started with wet it, pat it dry, load it with Cad Orange Hue, and paint the bottom part of the moon. So the technique here is that since it's a circle, I'm going to outline parts of the circle, but then on the middle part, I'm going to do up and down strokes. And we are going to blend it from orange to yellow. So you saw me load my brush in the orange first, and then I loaded it into the yellow. So the orange is fading to yellow, and I'm doing little short up and down strokes, and also strokes that are kind of going all directions, kind of diagonally too. By doing the strokes in different directions, you create moon texture. And it's hard to do the moon texture to create the shape of the circle. So on the edges of the circle, then just cut in with the brush by outlining the circle, but then on the center parts, do the strokes going in different directions. Okay, so kind of the same sort of technique here with the sky where we blended, only we're doing different kinds of strokes. I'm loading it in yellow, and this orange is gradually blending to yellow, and it's going to gradually blend into white as I work my way up. So the darkest part of the moon is on the bottom, and the lightest part of the moon is at the top. Okay, so there is also titanium white on my palette, so I loaded it in titanium white. Okay, I never rinsed my brush, so my brush has not ever been rinsed. Okay, and with the titanium white, I am continuing to work my way up this moon, blending in those colors by doing wet on wet blending, meaning the colors are blending on the canvas. I'm doing short little strokes that are going kind of up and down and diagonally in different directions, and dragging that paint up to get it to blend so that the color is fading into a lighter color. And because I never rinsed my brush, there's still a little bit of orange, and there's definitely a bunch of yellow left on that brush. So if you get kind of hints of orange up there, then that is okay, because we are creating the impression of moon texture. It's not a perfect fade. Okay, so I'm just kind of making my strokes go in all sorts of directions up there. You see that orange right there? That's what I was talking about, and that's okay. That gives some more indication that it is moon texture. So keep going up and down diagonally with these short little strokes. And then of course, so at the top, we want to kind of get our strokes to go in the direction of that circle. So that top part of the moon, so right, our strokes would be going curved up at the top. And then I am just going back in and blending some of the areas in here, especially that orange down there that didn't blend very well with that yellow. So just going over the strokes, working it while it is still wet. And then of course on the edges, make sure that you outline the edges. Okay? So there is our moon and our sky, and we're going to do some stars. So I think like 90% of my paintings have this splatter paint toothbrush technique in it. And so if this is the first video that you're watching of mine, what I'm doing is I'm using a this is my painter's toothbrush, so I use this only for painting, and I'm dipping it in titanium white and I'm flicking the brush and it creates the stars. So you kind of have to kind of get a feel for this. If your paint is too thick, you need to add just a tiny bit of water in there, but you don't want it dripping wet because it'll make a mess and you'll get frustrated and it won't be good. So try it out off your canvas before you actually do the splatters to make sure that it's going to have the right consistency. So kind of hold it at different angles to see what happens, and that is, so there's the stars. And later on I go back in with a white paint pen to make some larger, brighter stars. Okay, so next I am going to do the mountains, and for the mountains I'm using a 3/4 inch flat brush with the color Mars Black and titanium white. So we're going to make a light gray color. We're actually going to make 3 different shades of gray. So kind of think of the big picture here. We have a light gray mountain way in the background, a medium gray, and a black. So just a tiny bit of black will do the trick to make a light gray, because black is very strong. You don't need a lot of black to make a light gray, but kind of experiment with that. So I grabbed a big glob of white and did maybe 2 little tiny globs of the black, and I am using my flat brush to stir the colors, and I made it into a solid color. And so this is going to be the mountain way in the distance. So there's 3 mountains. So I'm going to use the 3/4 flat brush. I'm going to use the tip of the brush to paint a wavy line. Okay. So look at where that line is relative to the moon. It's low in the painting, but it's kind of close to the moon because it's the furthest mountain. And so I'm painting that in using the full width of the brush, and knowing that there's going to be 3 levels of mountains, I am not going to paint all the way to the bottom of the canvas because you're not going to see that part. If it helps you to just kind of make you feel more confident with this mountain thing, go ahead and paint it all the way to the bottom. There's no nothing wrong with that. It'll still turn out the same. Okay, so I'm just painting that in with that light gray. And then we're going to make a medium gray. So use the same color. So I just used the same light gray, but I added a little bit more black to it, and of course more titanium white to create more paint. But just make a gray that is darker than the first gray that you created, but still not completely solid Mars Black. and paint another level of mountain. So paint your wavy line and then fill it in at the bottom so that we still see the lighter color mountain behind it. Okay. And then, so for the bottom mountain, and I didn't even rinse my brush at this point because if I just used a lot of black at this point, it would still show up black. So that's what I did. I just grabbed a bunch of black on my paintbrush, and I'm going to do the black mountain line. Keep in mind, and actually you don't even need to keep this in mind about the castle silhouette. Don't worry about where your castle is going to be at this point. We're just doing the black mountain that's in the foreground. The traceable that I'm going to do in a little bit will kind of help set the base for that. So don't worry about the base of the castle at this point. Okay, so we have the 3 layers of mountains. And of course, so that black definitely needs to be filled in all the way to the bottom of the canvas. And then of course you can paint the sides if you are doing the sides of the canvas. So the side of this canvas, the bottom side of it would be all black. Unless you're doing like a different color on the side, then that's up to you. Okay, so we have our mountains, and next we're going to do the traceables. So we can't do this until everything's dry. So this is a good stopping point to take a break, or if you don't want to take a break, get your blow dryer out and get it to be all dry, because it's no fun to transfer things when your painting is wet. Okay, so this tutorial comes with 2 different traceables. I always make sure that they can be printed on 8.5 by 11, 8 by 10, the standard size computer paper, whatever that size is. I can't remember what size that is. So I'm going to trace the large dragon first. And so this is my heavily used piece of graphite paper, shiny side down. And so this dragon's overlapping the moon kind of at an angle there. And so I'm going to, with a pencil, trace the drawing. And the drawing will transfer to the canvas because the shiny side of the graphite paper is the graphite. So the drawing is being transferred. Okay, so don't stress too much about the position of this dragon. Just kind of make it so he's at least overlapping the moon about halfway. So the tip of his nose is pretty much halfway across the moon, but everything else is kind of relative. So kind of at an angle. And of course, you can get creative and trace it in a different spot. Okay, so it press pretty firmly, especially because we have the dark area of the sky. So press as firm as you can with this traceable. And of course, I always find it best that you lay your canvas flat at the table when tracing these. Okay, so the castle is in the lower right hand corner, lined up to the bottom of the canvas and then lined up to the far right side of the canvas. So the bottom corner, it's all lined up. Okay, and then so you can see that part of the mountain that we're going to paint back in with the black. And then the other dragon, so we have the small dragon, and he's in the upper right. Make sure that he's not overlapping the large dragon. And of course, you can place him in a different spot if you would like to. Okay, so when you're done with the tracing, next is this is really easy part. So we're going to paint everything that we drew in solid black because these are silhouettes. And I'm using Mars Black, and I'm going to start with my number 4 round brush. Okay, and I'm going to dip it in the water, but I'm not going to pat it dry. I'm going to swirl that into the black there so that it gets the paint to be a little bit more flowing. I like to do this with the black if I'm painting a silhouette in because so the black isn't so thick. Okay, so basically you are filling in your drawing. I'm starting with the large dragon and filling in the larger areas first. And then, so what's going to happen is we have a lot of tiny areas with these drawings. And so if you have a steady hand, you can probably still do this with the 4 round brush. But I actually recommend that you get your tiniest brush that you have. So I ended up grabbing my 10-0 liner for a couple parts in the head, especially to fill that in. And then if you want to get even more detailed, then I recommend using a black paint pen because then you can really get in there and control some of the points that are on this dragon. And then you could even get detailed and add some spikes on his back with that pen. And I use the pen especially in the castle for the flags and also the little dragons that are flying around the towers of the castle. So here I am switching to that 10-0 liner and getting that head part so you can really get into some of the tiny areas with the 10-0 liner. Okay, so I think I'm going to go silent here and just let you watch me paint this in. So it's pretty self-explanatory, painting in everything in the drawing, and you'll see me switch back and forth between the 4 round and the 10-0 liner and also the paint pen in a little bit here. Okay, so I'm going to go silent. Okay, so this is that paint pen that I was talking about here, and I highly recommend that for the flags because that is a very tiny area right there. So, this is a black acrylic water-based paint pen that I'm using. And then for the bats, not bats, dragons, let's assume they're dragons. I just kind of drew those in with the paint pen and kind of touching it up with the touch up some of the points on the castle. So that really helps you to get in there and do the fine details. Okay, so we have the other dragon in the upper right, and I'm going to use mostly the 10-0 liner for this, and then I'll switch back with the paint pen as well. Okay, so I'm going to go silent again here. Okay, so what I'm doing here with the paint pen is I'm drawing in little triangles along his back, little spikes on his tail and back. I'm doing that with the paint pen. And then, so while I have the paint pen, I'm just going to kind of touch up some of the areas of the dragon. So make sure all my points are going to a nice point. So you can really get in there and do some detailed work with that paint pen. Okay. So I mentioned this after I did the splatter paint, but I am now going back with my white paint pen and doing larger stars. So you can also do this with a tiny brush as well, so a 10-0 liner, and you can make little dots. And you can also use the back of your paintbrush to make little dots. But I'm also drawing in some other kinds of stars. So there's a little asterisk star, and then I'm going to do a little diamond star up here with some radiating lines. And so it just adds a little twinkle in the sky. It's a nighttime painting. It's a fantasy painting. We have some sparkling bright stars. Kind of gives some light in the area that's really dark in this painting, so gives some contrast to that wing that's really dark with the dark purple, so we have some bright areas to look at as well with these stars. And so when you're doing the stars, do some clusters, don't make them geometric, and then make them in all different kinds of size. So some kind of larger, some more fainter, and that's if you press harder with the pen, don't press too hard, but it makes it larger. So with the castle, I really like how this white looks. So I outlined the left edges of the castle. It makes it look like it's glowing. And I did that sort of thing with the dragon as well. Wasn't too happy with how it looked on the dragon. So you decide for yourself if you like this or not. And so I did the bottom edges of the large dragon with the white paint pen to make it look like it's just kind of glowing. Sometimes this looks good with a silhouette and sometimes it just looks like too much. So later on, so I did this with the wings as well. Again, don't do this unless you like this. But I did go back and erase it with a black paint pen. I painted over it because I didn't like it. And I'm going to show you right now. So I'm going to get that black paint pen and show you how easy it is to paint over that white again. So that white is all dry. Make sure it's dry so it doesn't turn gray. And it just covers it up nicely like it wasn't there. Okay. So, and I erased that other part of the wing that got cut off in the video. You didn't see that. So another final touch you can do are the clouds. And so this is a large round brush and dipped in titanium white and dried. So I'm going to do a dry brush cloud. And so I'm painting in little tiny circle strokes and forming the cloud. So the cloud kind of goes up and then the bottom part kind of goes horizontally. And so I'm forming it by painting circles. So this is a large round brush. The number on the brush is covered by paint, so I don't know what number this is, but my guess is it's at least a 12, maybe like a 20, so it's pretty large. And so all I'm doing with the paint, and the paint is dry because I wiped it off. I didn't dip my brush in the water or anything, so the brush was dry. And I dipped it in purple just now. So dip it in purple, dab it on the paper towel so it gets dry. And so there's only a little bit of purple. So I'm blending that purple into the white. I'm painting in little circles and it's light and feathery. That purple is blending with the cloud. And I'm going to force it to cover that moon a little bit because I want it to look like this cloud is covering the moon. It's a mystical fantasy painting. So we have mystical clouds that are kind of like fog clouds. That's why I'm doing the dry brush. So they're kind of see-through. Okay, so I'm going to do it again here. I didn't rinse my brush off because I didn't want any water on this brush. So there's some purple still on my brush. But I'm going to do the same thing. I dipped it in white, dabbed it on my paper towel, painting in circular strokes to form the shape of the cloud. The stroke should be very dry, feathery, see-through. So that's the point of wiping it on the towel because there's not a lot on that brush. We want it to be see-through. Okay, so and adding a little tiny bit of purple in there kind of gives it some more interest to look at versus if it was just white. Okay. So I'm going to do another one. Painting in little circular strokes, forming another cloud that's kind of covering this right part. And I got a little bit too much purple on there. So you can kind of see me dabbing it on the paper towel to get all that purple off. So that's what happens when you load too much on your brush. It's like, oh, wait a minute. So you want very, very little on your brush to get it to create that effect. Okay, so little circular strokes that kind of form the shape of the cloud. It's see-through, it's dry, it's feathery, but it still blends together nicely with that purple and white. Okay, so I decided there's going to be another cloud here on the bottom. Okay, wipe it off if there's too much paint, if it's loading on there too fast, if your paint is flowing too smoothly, wipe it off on that paper towel. It should be dry and feathery and see-through. Okay, so I'm just kind of going over it and wisping some horizontal lines in there because I really like to emphasize that those clouds are covering that moon just a little bit. So that is it. This painting tutorial has come to its conclusion. I hope that you enjoyed painting dragons with me, and I can't wait to see your painting, so be sure to share it. Thanks for watching.